The HR summons arrived at 8:47 on a Tuesday morning, 4 words in the subject line. Required meeting your compliance reports. I'd been at Hargrove Industrial Supplies for 14 years. I'd never been called to HR for anything other than benefits paperwork. My name is Owen Reyes. I'm 54 years old. I started on a factory floor in Ohio at 19, taught myself engineering through night school, and spent the next 3 decades doing the kind of work that doesn't get you invited to executive lunches but keeps industrial buildings from failing inspection. I joined Hargrove as a quality control specialist and worked my way up to senior engineer. No mentors, no sponsors. Just the work year after year. We need to discuss the falsified safety data in your compliance reports, said Diane Farrell, our HR manager. Her voice had the kind of practiced calm that means someone has rehearsed the conversation twice before you walked in. I stared at her. What falsified data? She slid a printed report across the table. My name was on the cover. The numbers inside had been altered. Not subtly. Whoever did it wanted the changes to be found. This isn't my work, I said. These figures have been changed. 3 senior staff members have independently flagged irregularities in your methodology, Diane replied. That's fairly conclusive, Owen. My chest tightened. 14 years. Every report I'd ever filed could be audited line by line, and it would come back clean. And now someone had put my name on fraudulent data and found 3 people willing to back the story up. I knew exactly who those 3 people were. Then the door opened without a knock. Perry Weston, CEO and founder, walked in. Diane jolted upright like she'd been caught doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing. Sir, we're in the middle of a disciplinary meeting. I know what you're in the middle of, Perry said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room completely. He sat down beside me, not behind the desk where executives usually position themselves. Owen has been working with my office for the past 3 weeks, on my explicit request. Diane's face drained of color. Please step outside, he told her. Then he looked at me. Call Margot Callahan in legal. Tell her it's time. I walked into the hallway with no idea who Margot Callahan was or what it's time meant. Through the frosted glass, I could see their silhouettes. Perry leaning forward, Diane pressed back in her chair. My hands weren't steady when I pulled out my phone, but something had shifted in that room. Whatever was coming next, I wasn't walking into it alone. 3 months earlier, none of this was on my radar. I was running standard compliance reviews, managing a small team, doing what I'd always done. Then our division head called me into his office and told me I'd been selected to lead Hargrove's expansion into Asian markets, specifically Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Industrial insulation products, new territory, significant revenue potential. The announcement surprised everyone. It surprised me too. But nobody was more surprised than Holden Briggs, our VP of product development, who had spent the better part of 6 months maneuvering to get his own candidate into the role. Holden had been at Hargrove 11 years. He was the kind of person who remembered your birthday, bought the first round at company events, and had standing poker nights with 2 board members. People respected him, or at least acted like they did. He operated the way certain people do in large companies, by making himself indispensable to the right people, rather than by being the best at anything in particular. He found me in the hallway the day after the announcement. No witnesses, no preamble. You're good at compliance work, he said. But this project needs relationships. Relationships in those markets take years to build. You don't have them. I'll focus on getting the product right, I said. He smiled at me the way you smile at someone you've already decided is a problem. Make sure you do. That conversation was the last civil one we had. Within the first week, Holden's team started running interference. Nolan Price, his deputy, began sitting on my data requests. Meeting invitations I should have been on stopped showing up in my calendar. When I needed current product spec sheets for the regulatory review, Nolan told me they were being updated. That answer held for 3 weeks straight, so I worked around them. I pulled publicly available technical standards from Japanese, Korean, and Taiwanese regulatory bodies and ran our product specs against them myself. What I found wasn't a minor gap. Our flagship industrial insulation line would fail fire-resistant certification in all 3 target markets. Not borderline fail. Fail by a significant margin. The reformulation required to meet standards would take a minimum of 6 months and carry real cost. It wasn't a death sentence for the project, but it was a serious delay that needed to be addressed before a single contract was signed. I put together a clean report. Documented sources, lab cross-references, specific regulatory citations. Then I brought it to Holden. He glanced at the first page and slid it back across his desk. Preliminary data, our local partners handle regulatory nuance. Stay on the current timeline. I tried Nolan next, conference room. Door closed, just the 2 of us. Look, Nolan said, lowering his voice, those standards are negotiating starting points. We've handled situations like this in other markets before. These aren't negotiating positions, I said. Their fire resistance test results. He leaned back in his chair and looked at me for a moment. Owen, some advice. Holden has relationships at this company you can't see from where you sit. Don't make yourself a problem he has to solve. That night, I found a message waiting in my work inbox. Anonymous sender already routed through a proxy server. One line, engineers who can't follow direction rarely last long enough to collect full pensions. I sat at my kitchen table with that message on my laptop screen. My wife Susan came in around 10, saw my face and sat down across from me. I turned the screen toward her. She read it twice. You going to quit? She asked. I don't know yet. Then start documenting everything tonight. That's what I did. I called my brother Adrian that same night. He's 58, spent 25 years in civil litigation before he semi-retired to a smaller practice in Columbus. He listened without interrupting, which is something he learned to do in courtrooms and never stopped doing. Document everything you said, everything they said, every date and time. He told me, if you find something that looks like intentional fraud, don't confront anyone directly with it. Find someone with actual authority and hand it to them. Don't try to fight this from inside the organization using only your own leverage. And if they fire me before I get that far, then you'll have documentation of retaliation. That's a different kind of leverage. I started keeping a log that night. Timestamps, names, exact quotes where I could remember them. I saved every email that showed information being deliberately withheld. I recorded 2 meetings using my phone when it was legal to do so in our state. I kept printed copies of my original compliance reports, the real ones, locked in my car. 2 weeks after that message appeared in my inbox, our regional director for Asia Pacific, Miles Okafor, flew in from Singapore for a project review. 15 people in the main conference room, another 10 joining remotely. Holden ran the presentation, polished slides, confident delivery, nothing but green check marks on the timeline graphics. Owen will update us on the regulatory approval track, Holden said near the end, gesturing toward me with a smile. First I'd heard about presenting anything. A classic setup. I stood up. Thanks, Holden. I don't have slides prepared since I wasn't informed I'd be presenting today, but I can speak to what my review has found. Our current product formulation does not meet fire-resistant standards in Japan, South Korea, or Taiwan. I have documented test results that show we need significant reformulation before any product enters those markets. Miles leaned forward. What kind of timeline are we talking about? Before I could answer, the video feed cut out, screen went black, audio stayed live. Technical difficulties, Holden said smoothly, already moving toward the front of the room. While that's being addressed, Miles, let me respond directly. Owen is referencing preliminary data that has since been superseded by more comprehensive testing. Our compliance benchmarks are on track and we are proceeding on schedule. That was a straightforward lie. There was no superseding test data. I had requested every test result filed in the past 8 months and nothing supported what Holden had just told a regional director. The video feed came back. Miles's face appeared on screen. He didn't look satisfied. I want to see both sets of results. Today, please. After the call ended, Holden found me at the water cooler. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You're either very brave or very stupid, he said. I just read the test results, I said. Last chance to be a team player, Owen. Think carefully about which side of this you want to be on. 2 days later, Nolan Price was waiting by my car in the parking garage. Not aggressive, just deliberate. He stood between me and my door until I stopped walking. Holden wanted to deliver a message in person, he said. Don't make yourself a problem he has to solve. Same words as before, different setting. I understood the escalation. That night I made a decision. I was done trying to fix this from inside. I began requesting access to product development files, framing each request as part of a broader market analysis I was preparing. Most requests got denied. Enough were approved that I started building a clearer picture of what was actually happening. And then, buried 3 folders deep inside a budget projection archive, I found a spreadsheet that made my stomach drop. It wasn't a compliance planning document. It was a liability modeling document. Specifically, it calculated how many consumer injury claims, how many regulatory fines, and how many potential fatalities Hargrove could absorb in Asian markets before the total financial exposure exceeded the cost savings from using non-compliant materials. They had put a number on acceptable casualties, a specific number in a cell in a spreadsheet with a formula attached to it. I printed it, closed the folder, sat in front of my screen for exactly as long as it took to understand what I was holding. Then I put the pages in an envelope and drove home. Susan was already in bed. I sat at the kitchen table and called Adrian. That's your document, he said when I described what I'd found. That's the difference between negligence and intentional wrongdoing. Do not send it to anyone internally. Do not use it to confront Holden or Nolan. Get it out of the building and into the right hands from the outside. His advice was the same as before, but now I understood why it mattered. I spent the following week compiling everything into a single organized file: the original test results, the emails showing data suppression, my meeting logs, the parking garage conversation, the anonymous email, the spreadsheet. Then I contacted an independent engineering firm with ASCE affiliation and submitted our product technical specifications for third-party review, without Hargrove's name attached. Just the specs, the product codes, and the relevant standards. What I didn't know was that those product codes were registered in a national materials database that our insurance carrier used for their annual portfolio audit. When the ASCE firm flagged the specs as non-compliant and filed their advisory notice through standard channels, the carrier's risk team cross-referenced the product codes back to Hargrove within 72 hours. Standard procedure on their end. They sent a formal inquiry to our legal department the same week. I didn't find out about any of that until Margot Callahan explained it to me. Their preliminary finding came back 11 days after I submitted the specs. Non-compliant across all 3 markets. The advisory notice went into the system, and somewhere in our insurance carrier's office, an analyst started pulling Hargrove's product liability coverage terms. I was still waiting to find out if any of it would matter when I walked into that HR meeting and saw my name on a fraudulent report. Then Perry Weston walked through the door and sat down beside me, and everything changed direction. Margot Callahan was already in a small conference room on the executive floor when I arrived. Tall, silver hair cut close, the kind of stillness that comes from years of knowing exactly what she's doing and why. She shook my hand and gestured to the chair across from her without any preamble. "I understand you've had an eventful morning," she said. "That's one way to put it." She set a document in front of me. Whistleblower protection agreement. Immunity from liability, guaranteed continued employment, board-level protection regardless of outcome. "Before we go further, I need you to sign this." I read it through twice, then I signed it. "Good," she said. "Now let me explain what's actually been happening." Paula Stowe had been Hargrove's internal compliance auditor for 9 years. What almost nobody in the company knew was that Paula reported directly to the board of directors, not to management. She had flagged irregularities in the safety testing budget under Holden's division 3 months ago, right around the time I was assigned to lead the Asia project. The board had authorized a quiet investigation, but needed evidence of intentional wrongdoing, not just negligent oversight. The difference mattered legally, and it mattered for what came next. When you accessed that spreadsheet at 11:38 p.m. and printed it, Margot said, "We knew you'd found the core document. We'd flagged that file for access monitoring 6 weeks ago. Why not move sooner?" I asked. "Because negligence is a personnel issue. What's in that spreadsheet is fraud. We needed someone to find it organically, without the company being the one to surface it. So there would be no question about chain of custody or internal manipulation of evidence." She paused. "You also went outside the company. The ACE advisory notice, the insurance carrier inquiry, that created independent external corroboration we couldn't have manufactured ourselves. I thought about the 11 days I'd spent waiting for the engineering firm's report, not knowing if any of it would land anywhere useful. Holden is presenting to the full board in 2 hours, Margot continued. He believes he's walking in to defend the Asia timeline. He doesn't know who else will be in the room. Cole Harmon, the board chairman, had arranged 3 additional attendees. A representative from Japan's Regulatory Commission, one from Taiwan's Building Materials Safety Board, one from South Korea's Consumer Protection Agency. All 3 had been quietly contacted through international channels after Paula's team flagged the product compliance failures weeks earlier. There was also a representative from Hargrove's insurance carrier in the room. He was there because of the formal inquiry their risk team had sent over after tracing the ASCE advisory notice back to our product codes. He was not there to be friendly. I watched from the back wall as Holden set up his laptop and arranged his presentation materials with the ease of someone who'd done this 100 times. He nodded at board members he knew by name. He smiled at the regulatory officials when Cole introduced them, recovered fast from the surprise, and said something about welcoming their direct input. He was good. I'll give him that. His first 10 minutes were smooth. Revenue projections, market entry graphics, timeline slides with green indicators across every category. He spoke with the confidence of a man who had never once considered that the room might already know what he'd done. Then the question started. The Taiwan representative adjusted her glasses and leaned forward. "Your projections assume immediate regulatory approval across all target markets. What is your specific timeline for completing fire resistance certification?" Holden answered smoothly. "We anticipate expedited review based on our existing North American certifications and our relationships with local partners." The South Korea representative looked up from his copy of the presentation. "Given the significant technical differences between North American and Korean flame-resistant standards, how specifically are you bridging that gap in your current formulation?" A pause. Brief, but visible. Perhaps I should move ahead to our compliance strategy slide, Holden said. Clicking forward, Margot stood up from her seat at the side of the room, tablet in hand. Before we continue, the board should review some additional materials relevant to this discussion. Perry nodded once. Connect her device, Holden. Holden's jaw tightened. He stepped aside. The first document that appeared on screen was the spreadsheet, the liability model. The one with the casualty calculations formatted into clean rows and labeled columns like it was a quarterly budget projection. This document, Margot said, details a deliberate financial strategy to enter Asian markets using materials that do not meet local safety standards, while modeling the acceptable financial exposure from resulting injuries and fatalities. The Japan representative leaned forward and studied the figures without speaking. I've never seen that document before, Holden said. His voice was still controlled. Someone has clearly pulled this out of context. Margot swiped to the next screen, an email chain with Holden's name in the sender field, dated 4 months back, discussing how to handle test results that didn't support the project timeline. Then a second chain showing explicit instructions to Nolan on suppressing Owen's data requests. These have been altered, Holden said. I can demonstrate that with the originals. The metadata and server logs confirm authenticity, Margot replied, as do sworn statements from 3 members of your team who have accepted immunity agreements in exchange for cooperation. Holden's eyes moved to Renee Marsh, seated near the front. She looked back at him without flinching. That was the moment I understood who had gone first. Margot kept going, meeting recordings. Budget manipulation records showing funds redirected from safety testing to accelerate the production timeline. A separate document trail connecting Gavin Briggs, Holden's son, to the supplier contract for the non-compliant materials. Gavin had been serving as the sales liaison on that contract and had collected $340,000 in brokerage fees over 18 months without disclosing his relationship to Holden. Every time Holden tried to interrupt, another document appeared on screen. By the time Margot finished, he had stopped talking entirely. Cole broke the silence. He looked at the 3 regulatory officials and spoke carefully. On behalf of this board, I want to express our genuine apology for what you've witnessed today. This does not reflect the standards of this company. The Japan representative responded first. Had these materials entered our market as planned, we would be discussing buildings, schools, residential towers, constructed with insulation engineered to appear compliant while failing under actual fire conditions. We will require complete transparency and independent verification before any Hargrove product receives consideration for approval, the South Korea representative added. Perry looked at Holden. Security will escort you, Nolan, and Leah out. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Renee stood up. I want to say something for the record, she said. I participated in this because I was told my career would be destroyed if I didn't cooperate. That doesn't excuse what I did. But I want this board to know that Owen Reyes raised these safety issues through every proper channel available to him and was systematically blocked at every step, deliberately and repeatedly. Cole looked toward the back wall where I was standing. Mr. Reyes, would you come forward, please? Walking to the front of that boardroom, past Holden standing off to the side with security already positioned near the door, was the longest 30 feet of my life. My legs felt steady enough, but my mind was still catching up to everything that had happened in the last 3 hours. Cole waited until I reached the front before he spoke. In light of what this board has reviewed today, we'd like to offer you a newly created position, Director of Quality and Compliance, reporting directly to this board, with a 35% salary adjustment effective immediately. Your work on this project and your integrity throughout has not gone unnoticed. I said yes. I didn't hesitate. The rest of the meeting moved quickly after that. Security walked Holden, Nolan, and Leah Dunn out through the side exit while the board continued discussion with the regulatory officials. Each of the 3 representatives said something similar in different words. They respected the outcome, they would require independent verification going forward, and they were willing to continue dialogue if Hargrove demonstrated genuine commitment to compliance. The insurance carrier representative stayed an extra 20 minutes after the meeting closed. He and Margot spoke quietly at the far end of the table. I didn't need to hear the conversation to understand what it was about. 3 weeks after that, Gavin Briggs received formal notice of an investigation into conflict of interest related to his supplier contract arrangement. The $340,000 in brokerage fees he'd collected over 18 months, without disclosing his relationship to the VP who approved the contracts, had been fully traced. He was required to return the money. His involvement in the project was terminated. Paige Briggs, Holden's niece, was a different matter. She'd been working on the project as a coordinator. The investigation found no evidence she had any knowledge of what Holden's team was doing. She kept her job. That was the right call, and I said so when Margot asked me for my assessment. You don't punish someone for their last name. About a month into the new role, my assistant told me Holden was waiting outside my office. I told him he had 5 minutes. He came in looking like a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks. The polished VP version of Holden Briggs was completely gone. What sat down across from me was just a tired person trying to figure out if there was any way to limit the damage. They're pursuing criminal negligence charges, he said. My reputation is finished, 11 years at this company gone. I didn't say anything. You could speak to them, he continued. Tell them I was aggressive about deadlines, not deliberately reckless. That there's a difference. I opened my desk drawer and slid the spreadsheet across to him. The liability model, the one with the casualty calculations. Read it again, I said. Then tell me what you'd call it. He looked at it for a long moment. His jaw worked like he was going to say something. He didn't. He stood up and left. That was the last time I saw him. 6 months later, our reformulated insulation line entered all 3 Asian markets with top-tier safety ratings. The 6-month delay had cost real money. Perry acknowledged that at the launch event and said something I wrote down afterward. Compliance done right isn't a cost center. It's the only version of this business that's still standing in 10 years. The regulatory officials who had been in that boardroom became genuine allies. They helped us navigate approval processes that tied up our competitors for months. One of them later told Margot that what they'd witnessed at Hargrove, meaning the self-correction and the willingness to start over, had been more reassuring than a clean record would have been. In the new role, I built an anonymous reporting channel for safety and compliance concerns. Any employee, any level, could submit something without their name attached. In the first 6 months, it was used 4 times. 2 were minor procedural questions. 1 flagged a documentation gap in our domestic testing process that we corrected before it became a problem. 1 reported pressure being applied to a junior engineer to sign off on specs he wasn't comfortable with. We addressed that one the same week it came in. On the anniversary of the board meeting, an email arrived from an address I didn't recognize. 1 line. You were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry. No signature. I didn't need one. That evening, Susan made dinner and Eli drove up from Columbus to join us. He'd heard pieces of the story over the months, but never the full version. I told him most of it over the meal. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Were you scared? He asked. I thought about the anonymous email in my inbox. Nolan in the parking garage, the nights I sat at that kitchen table wondering if I was about to lose 14 years of work over something I hadn't done wrong. Yeah, I said, most of the way through, but you kept going anyway. Didn't feel like I had a choice, not one I could live with. He nodded and didn't push further. That was enough. Some of you reading this have been in a version of that position. Maybe not a liability spreadsheet and a boardroom full of regulators, but something. A number that didn't add up, a direction you were told to follow that you knew was wrong. A choice between keeping your head down and saying the thing that needed to be said out loud. I'm not going to tell you it always works out the way it did for me. I got lucky in ways I didn't control. Paula had already been watching. Perry had already decided to act. The timing held. But I'll tell you this. At 54, with a son I see every few weeks and a wife I've been married to for 26 years, the question I kept coming back to wasn't about the job. It was about what kind of person I was going to be when things got hard, what I was going to be able to tell Eli when he asked. If you've ever stood at that fork and made the harder call, you already know what I'm talking about. And if you're standing there right now, still deciding, I hope this was worth your time.